So here's what we've done. We're going to kind of work backwards a little bit on this clinic. So we took a few phrases actually, from our show last fall for the color guard to perform. And so we've kind of we're going to perform them different ways to kind of show you what we're talking about as we go through, and maybe some of the conversations, things that we notice, and then how we eventually came to the end product of what they were doing. So we're going to see the phrase. The first phrase, this was right towards the end of our show. We're going to build this larger phrase as we go on. So they're going to do some mini phrases as we start. So we're going to take this first phrase, color guard, and everything is going to be unison.
So as you watch, you can hear clearly the musical track. That section from a phrasing, that's development, right? That is not an arrival, that is development. We are going somewhere. And you go, okay, what can we do to add interest? So the next sequence, what's gonna happen is Mr. Lewis, he's just gonna layer the phrase so that we hear that the three, or the feeling of one. I shouldn't say hear. We see what we hear in the layering.
You know, what we say to him as band directors, like, is there any way to like A-B that phrase? And that's what we say, like, okay, is there an A's and there B's? You know, and then he does his magic guard whisper talk, and we get to the second.
I like that.
Yeah, second version. So this is our A-B split.
I mean, it's crazy, right? You see that little change and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that makes more sense.
And we haven't put any more, I mean, we haven't asked any more from the performer other than, I think he told them to delay 3 counts and the second group come in. So, you know, that was a pretty easy adjustment that could be made in a full ensemble rehearsal, actually.
You can tell as this musical phrase's development, the kids are doing something different, and then it comes together towards the end. As we get closer to the cadence point of the phrase, it starts to happen. So it's not just the same thing the whole time.
The other thing that I've learned as a band director that, you know, kind of in our like, okay, A, B, we can do those, we can layer some things in. Okay, I see, you know, color guard directors do this all the time. We can alter the facings. So we can have them face different directions, even to create more layers, more texture, and make it a little bit more interesting. So now we're gonna keep the A-B in that you just saw, and now we're gonna have them alter their facings. Okay, so this is the third version of that same phrase.
When I watch that now, what sticks out to me is you go, okay, there's contrary motion that takes place, and then when you get to the cadence point, all the flags go to the same way and it comes into a unison statement, and there's an arrival point. And all of a sudden I go, oh yeah, now I see the cadence point, right, that I didn't really see it before because I just saw flags going in circles, right? And so now all of a sudden you go, there's more music that exists there in the writing.
And in reality, I mean, you can see that, you know, so we did the first version and you're like, okay, well, that seems pretty musical, but we've done these very simple things and added these texture things. Again, we're building, so if we're just doing unison color guard work, okay, what is that adding to the overall production? The winds don't play in unison the whole time. The winds don't move in unison the whole time. So we're watching this to make sure that it reflects. And again, all these textural concerns as we build, using the visual to build to the end as we go through. So it's really, you know, easy. So looking at that, you're like, the first one version wasn't bad. Well, you know, as we go through. Now in reality, in the drill, the real thing that we did last fall, they alternated. So he just had, they were framing, I think at this point in time, they were framing, and he would A, B, A, B, A, B all around the band. So it wasn't a front field, back field type of thing. So that's how they did that. But you can decide, you know, as we go through. So that's what they just A, B'd all the way around the band.
So now we're going to go on next 16 counts, and they're going to do the same thing. They're going to do everything in unison. So now if we start thinking about building phrases together, you go, okay, the last phrase was a development phrase, but it ended in a cadence point, and they did something in unison. Now what do? Do we continue to go all in unison, or is there something we can do to layer this phrase now, and where is it going? So when you start to build sequential phrases, it's not just, oh, we want this here or that here. It's what happened in the phrase before and what's happening in the phrase after, because we're trying to, and the audience, they don't even know this. We are trying to generate excitement and interest, but we are tricking them. It is an illusion, right? Where can I take somebody's eye? Where can I take their ears? We do the same thing on a concert band stage, right? You go, what do you want me to hear? Well, I want you to hear this. The color guard's the same way. What do you want me to see? What do you want to pull out of the music, right? And so this next phrase, Mr. Lewis, we're going to split the focus front to back, right? Now, I will tell you, in context, there's clearly a ripple that takes place there, right? In the real drill set, what happened is, like Ms. Harvey said, the guard was framing the band, so the ripple started in the back and came around the ensemble. We were bringing visual focus. It's hard to do it with this few students, of course, but we were bringing visual focus around the ensemble to the front. Now, there was a solo toss at the end of that, right? Okay, we want to create effect and a toss. The whole color guard could have thrown the flag, but we're taking into consideration, Mr. Lewis is going, I don't want the whole color guard throwing the flag yet because we have another phrase. We're going somewhere from here, and I don't want to ruin, right? It's like a dynamic build. If you get to fortissimo too soon, you lost your chance.
Okay, we've done all of this variety and all of this, so now it's the big finish, you know. So it does make sense. We've layered things in, we've A-B'd whatever. Now it makes a lot of sense to unison this whole thing out to the end. So let's perform the last phrase, you guys, and this one is the version, right? Okay, in unison. You'll notice, you know, a couple of things in there. I mean, you can clearly hear that the music was in that halftime feel. And if you were to see the band was moving in that halftime feel. And so we created velocity with the color guard as it went around. So, you know, and of course our drill writer, you know, we worked with him to make sure so the band, we told you the guard had been framing. Well, now the band is of course moving forward for the last big moment. I mean, we want them to get loud, right? So we're bringing them to the audience. Okay, the color guard is bringing the color all around. We're about to fill the entire field, but they got to move or they're not going to make it. You know what I mean? And so they're creating velocity. So you saw them moving their feet in double time, and they are covering some ground. Which, of course, I also want to say, I mean, Ian, when he writes, Mr. Lewis, when he writes all of that work, that's also consideration. What is the distance that they are traveling, and is their work appropriate for that? You know, Ian is coming through, and he's getting a first version out there. We really are looking at things in musical phrases. And we're approaching the color guard. I mean, we're doing the same thing with the band. We're detailing their phrase shape. So we're also then doing the same thing with the color guard. So now we're going to put all of these phrases together in a couple of varieties and let you see now the longer phrase and the difference that it makes.
Yeah, this first one now, it's going to be all of those phrases together, and they're just going to do the unison, right? The basic, whatever, version 1, if you will, of each part. Yeah, I mean, as long as that gets clean, That'll work, right? That'll work. As long as those flags go together, that'll work. But there's the other layers of interest. We can create more interest and more excitement based on changing